Hello, welcome to From the Editor. I'm Mike Shearer, Executive Editor of the Columbus Dispatch, and I'm here today with reporter Dean Narciso to discuss his cover story that's running this Sunday on solar fields in Ohio and the political battles and local battles that are happening around them. So, Dean, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so first we always start these conversations by just telling a bit about what you do here at the Dispatch. You're one of our reporters. You're covering a lot of our north suburbs. So tell us a little bit about what you do and what your weeks are like.
Well, typically it's, getting in touch with sources or having them get in touch with me. I cover, local government, some politics, human interest stories, a variety of topics. And a typical week would be, gathering that information, touching base with my editor on planning, looking forward to what's going to run when, and then basically making calls and, jumping into stories and looking for details and hopefully coming up with something that's interesting to people, accurate and compelling to read.
Okay, and you cover basically Worthington, Westville, and all of Delaware County, which is a lot of ground to cover, obviously.
Correct. They can be busy, and meetings generate a lot of news, but so do just tips from people that would tell us things that aren't happening at those meetings that we might need to know about.
Okay, so we're doing these cover stories every Sunday now in our new magazine style Sunday edition. And we were talking around here, I guess it was last year at some point in time, about all the battles going on about solar fields in Ohio and in rural Ohio. And we asked you to spend time looking into it, and you have done that and come back with your story this week. And when I sat down to read this, I was very intrigued that the first man you talk about is Madison County farmer Aaron Berger. And Madison County's been a little different than a lot of other areas of Ohio where there's been more battles. So tell us a bit about Aaron Berger and what he's doing out there at his farm in Madison County.
Aaron Berger kind of represents this controversy, the divide between people who want solar farms and those who are adamantly opposed. He sees both sides. So he has a little office out of which he can look to one side and see fields of corn and soybeans that were not profitable for him last year. Out the other side of his window, he sees big panels of glass. These are the voltaic cells that are producing income for him in the magnitude of like $800,000 a year for he and his business partners. So he's an interesting gentleman, salt of the earth farmer who wants to preserve his land, doesn't necessarily like solar energy. He doesn't want to see farms converted into something that isn't farming. A generational farmer. He has a family that wants to continue farming. And so not many people do these days. But he sees both sides of it. And that's why we used him as an example of this, this controversy. But
the revenue he's generating, you read $800,000 a year, that gives him some defense against a bad growing season or drought or whatever may happen. So he has an income that he knows he'll have. And I thought it was also interesting, though, you're right, he only has it for the next 29 years. He put a sunset on it, and they also if they don't have some kind of extension or agreement to keep going, they have to remove the solar panels from his farm still. So they're not there till the end of time.
They're not there till forever, and once they come out, he can reconvert or convert that land back into tillable land, and his family can continue on the legacy of farming. But most of these leases that these energy companies are providing farmers are about 30 or 40 years. So, it's not when the farmers say, hey, don't take away our farmland, don't, pull us out of, the inventory. It's not forever. And it really is a supplement to the farmers who are struggling because of drought, or
whatever condition they face.
Weather. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Cost of products, labor. There's a lot. Farming is still a challenging business, and still Ohio's number one business is agriculture. But this gives them some, I guess, defense against downturns.
Correct.
You also write toward the end of your story that on this particular farm, the Berger farm, they are also growing crops between the rows of solar panels. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, this is a partnership with the Ohio State University Agriculture department, and basically. Berger and this company that are leasing the property, they're allowing, between the panels of solar cells, they're allowing, I think it's some type of grass or wheat to be grown there and then harvested. And it's really experimental. It's to see how well this is done, but farmers elsewhere have done this, having sheep graze.
Yeah.
Or, something that still continues some kind of, generation of agriculture and not just dormant land.
So an acre of solar field doesn't have to be just solar power. It can be other things too, to some
That's
degree.
right. That's right.
Okay. Now, the other interesting part about this is Madison County now has 5 operating solar fields, is that, or they're working
They've got 3. They're working on 5.
Working on
Yeah,
5.
Correct.
So it's been more well received there than in other parts of Ohio. And the county, I think we wrote here, is already received $5 million in various taxes from that work. Why has Madison County been more receptive to it from your reporting?
That was the whole purpose of looking into this story from the beginning. To me, why are some communities more interested, and why are some embracing solar, whereas others, like maybe Delaware County, are more reluctant to embrace it? Some of it has to do with the the value of the land in Delaware, where it's the fastest growing county and most affluent county in Ohio. The land is much more developable for residential or housing, commercial, whatever. Yeah. In Madison County, they have lots of land, and if all 5 of these projects go through, it could be up to 10% of their entire land mass that's used for solar. They did eventually put a moratorium on future developments, so there is a limit. But I think the farmers there recognize that there is some value to, as you say, to supplement their income in these lean years, and they have lots of land. I mean, it's one of the most agrarian counties, in Central Ohio, at least.
Okay. So there's 3 current solar farms operating, and they're generating enough power to power all the households in Columbus, which is significant. That's not an insignificant amount of power.
I found that amazing. That struck me, and I think there's been claims that if you had a few square miles, I forget how many, 4 square miles or something, it's been said that amount of space is enough to power several states, if not the whole country.
Wow.
And that's part of the story, that if you put these in the middle of an arid, Arizona, or an area that's not being used, a desert area in the West, that it would be more palatable than putting it in the middle of Ohio.
And that makes sense to a degree, obviously.
Right.
And so let's talk a little bit about why it's not as well received elsewhere. Maybe talk a little bit about the Ohio Power Siting Board and their role in all this. And there was a law passed in 2021 called Senate Bill 52 that kind of changed how these projects get reviewed and the say that local officials have them. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, it's as far as the Power Siting Board, they've got 8 criteria, and essentially it's very subjective. And some critics have said, well, they spend way too much time looking at the public outcry or public opinion. Logan County was a great example because they recently denied or withdrew their application, because of just the public sentiment. But they've got 7 other criteria that they use about the public, how useful this is going to be for public energy consumption and how it's going to empower the power grid and increase the productivity of our energy supply. So Senate Bill 52 basically ties in because it gave communities that are reluctant to have solar the opportunity to create exclusion zones, which many have done. And some have created exclusion zones for their entire county, the unincorporated areas, meaning those areas that aren't cities. They've said, you can't build these, we don't want you to build these anywhere. And the farmers are really driving this. The farmers in some communities just want to maybe hold on to their land for something more profitable than, $800,000 a year.
But this really gets into property rights versus neighbors' rights. I mean, if I own a 500-acre farm and I want to put solar on it, isn't that my right to do that within the certain rules of the road, so to speak? But yeah, neighbors now have more say, or the township trustees or county commissioners have more say over what I can do in my land, at least when it comes to power generation.
That's exactly right. They are pitting farmer against farmer. Some of these are neighboring farmers, or a residential area next to a farmer where they used to get along, and now there's animosity. I mean, we've heard stories of friction, people saying bad things even at a church service, because the property owner, the farmer, wants that ability to use his land as he feels he's legally obligated, and others feel like it's an infringement on their rights.
Yeah. There was a public hearing for one project in Fairfield County back in January. 300 people showed up. A lot of people attacked it. You're right here because of as a solar field being unnecessary, unsightly, and dangerous to natural resources. Others hailed its benefits of clean energy and so on. So this really comes down to kind of a not in my backyard argument in some cases, right? But there's also, I think obviously we need, with agriculture as our number one industry, we need to leave some land to farm. We can't put solar everywhere, obviously, but I don't know that we're in any danger of doing that either. So how's that kind of work out, I guess?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for solar fields and solar arrays that produce, utility scale energy, but just as many in opposition. So the challenge is trying to figure out, which of these are relevant, which of these, are legitimate concerns. We've heard from people, the Fairfield County example, the NIMBY idea that some of these panels at certain points of the day are going to create glare or a reflection of the sun rays right into the eyes of the homeowner.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I've heard that from other people, but that's what they're, coming up with.
Well, in our current political environment, there's a lot of misinformation about things, probably going both ways on this, a lot of misconceptions and just not, I guess, fear of the unknown, I guess, too, probably.
That's exactly what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Is that this is new.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a, brave new frontier that people are having to grapple with. And with anything that's new, especially with, our country's legacy of farming, there's going to be fear that changing it, whether it's from a residential developer coming in, buying land, that it's going to radically change our quality of life and prosperity and just the way we do things. So it's a politically charged, emotionally charged debate that these communities are having.
And there's consequences for that, too. You wrote a little bit about Knox County, which has basically said we don't want solar at all. One of the county commissioners up there was supportive of solar, Tom Collier, and he lost his re-election last year. And for reading this, that's largely based on the solar issue. Is that correct?
That's exactly why he lost it.
Okay.
And it was an issue where a Republican, he's a Republican, and a Republican Party operative came down and said, if you don't, work with me against solar in Knox County, we're going to find a candidate to run against you. This person did, and he lost.
He lost. Okay. All right. So there's the map that's running with your story shows there's a ton of these already being built, being considered across the state. Largely, as you write, there's not many in Southeast Ohio because of the topography down there, but largely in the other rural areas of the state, there's quite a bit of activity going on. What do you think is going to happen in the next year or two? Will these projects more be proposed, or where do you see this headed? Just based on what you've been hearing from people you've talked to.
Well, there is a question. We have a new federal administration that isn't gung-ho on renewable energy. And so depending on how that all shakes out, that could change the landscape. But as these developers come in, the solar energy companies come in and make these pitches to people about prosperity, that's hard to deny. It's a very attractive offering for people who are struggling. And so I think it's going to continue.
So probably a lot of what we've seen in the last few years will continue at the same pace. When they find a landowner willing to give it a shot, we'll see whether it goes through or not and what happens from there.
Correct. Yeah, okay. There's no guarantee on all of this, and it's all kind of at the whims of politicians and local governments. But I think the one thing that is guaranteed is that there will continue to be friction between those who want it and those who don't. And some of these signs that we're seeing opposing solar on unique farmland, and others who say, they're all gung-ho about the prosperity that this brings and the fact that it's renewable energy that isn't as polluting as coal or other fossil fuels.
Yeah. Well, Dean, I know learned a lot reading this. I had no idea that there's a chance Madison County will have 10% solar coverage here at some point in time. But so I hope our readers enjoy your story and pick up a lot of knowledge about solar and the battles here in Ohio. Until next week, we'll be here with another reporter to talk about the shot spotter system in Columbus. But thank you all for watching and joining us. Appreciate it.